So I moved the board over there, so as we're walking out, you can read some of these, okay? And we might highlight some at the end of the service. But I want to give time right now to one of our dads, Tim Chou, also one of our missionaries with Navigators, and he's going to share some from his heart, from the Word. Okay, Tim, come on up. You want to use this instead?
Yeah, I don't mind.
Don't like that. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Raise your hands if you're excited for Father's Day. All right, awesome. Actually, where did the whiteboard go? Can we read a couple of those? All right, cool. Let me read. Or actually, can someone just share real quick what was before and after? I would just like to know. Maybe like 2 or 3 dads. Just stand up and share what it was like before dad, you're a dad, and after. Just 2 or 3 dads. I'll start off, okay? Real quick. I think before I was buck wild still. I had a good time, you know. I think once I had my kids, you know, it's more wild and more fun, but it's just more responsibilities. You know, I think growing up, I never only really thought about myself and Stacy, you know. But as I had kids, I realized I had to think about them more and sacrifice for them, you know. And I think it's a lot more time sacrificing, but it's worth it for the long haul. Maybe we just get a couple of dads to share. Okay, Frank, perfect.
Well, since I wrote kind of like chicken feet or something where I was chicken scratch, nobody can read it, you know, so I say it then, you know. Before I was a dad, speed, I'm running in the high speed all the time, you know, 80 plus in the freeway like a norm, you know, like no big deal, you know. Life is like everything fast. And I do a lot of things, the one that I like to do, especially scuba diving, you know, those kind of adventure. I feel like life, this is it, you know, nothing. But after I become a dad, those things I feel like dangerous again, you know. You don't want to do it anymore, you know. I guess my life more like have a responsible, you know, to make sure they all live, you know, and we can take care of them, stuff like that. So I don't do those stuff anymore. Right now, if you can see in the freeway, somebody riding like 45 miles an hour in the freeway, that's me, you know. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Frank. Maybe just like 2 more dads. Okay, thanks, Ron.
Hello. Well, before I was a dad, as my probably kids know, I'm very thrill seeker. If I can jump 20 feet high right there, I will do it. If I can break my ankle just jumping, I will do it. I will try every single thing that probably nobody or normal man can do, and I'll do it. But as a father, you second guess yourself, but the thrill doesn't change. The thrill of raising kids. So, and then my faith grew abundantly because I'm a father now, earthly father, and rely more to him. So, that's me.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Ron. Maybe one more dad. Anthony? Bill?
I'll never go up. Let's see. When did I know I was a dad? When I started changing diapers, that was a definite, then I knew I was dad then. That was it. I think for me, well, when I got Xiaoting and Xiaoli, we adopted them, of course, from China, but when they brought them over, Xiaoting over and put it in our arms, and I just knew the Holy Spirit was there bringing her into our lives. And for me, it was just altering, and I really knew I was a father. I was really a dad now. And I come from a very, very big family, and it just meant so much to me. I knew that there's going to be birthdays, and there's going to be Christmases and Thanksgivings and all the things, and Father's Day, and all these things that we share. And that really the Lord really impressed that on my heart and my mind, that I was a father and I had so much responsibility. So that's what I think, and I'm proud of my daughter so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks. Just sort of a different perspective. I didn't have a strong father-son relationship growing up. So when I became a father, I realized the importance of that relationship, and really showed me how to be a father. She says I spoil the kids, so that's probably why. And I realized how important it is to have a father in the home and to invest in your children's lives. I want to commend all the fathers here that are doing that, because even though I went to church as a kid, I was sent to church, and my parents didn't go. And to see you here supporting your children, raising them up in the way of the Lord is encouraging. So that's what I learned, and I learned how much our Father loves us because of how much I love my children. He loves us even more than that. So that's my lesson.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I think being a father is definitely one of the best blessings of my life. You know, growing up, I never wanted to get married. I never imagined being a dad. I just always been a big kid. But once I came to know the Lord, my whole life changed, you know. And I think about my relationship with my dad. I'm happy he's here. You know, him and my mom sacrificed a lot coming from Taiwan. And me and my dad never had the best relationship growing up, you know, just being honest. You know, but now we have a good relationship. And, you know, we have affection. We can share that we love each other. We can hug and kiss each other. We didn't do that growing up, you know. And I think about all the things he sacrificed for me and my brother. You know, that's my brother, Tommy. I don't know if you guys know, but I have a brother in church. His name is Tommy. You know, some people have been asking about that. So, but yeah, and I think about Nate. I think about Nate growing up. I remember the first day he went to Montessori school, and I was like, man, you know, why does Nate have to go to school so early, Stace? You know, it's like, he's like 18 months. It doesn't make any sense, you know? Still in diapers, you know, what's the point? You know, and I remember going, and I remember Nate like doing all these things, like squeezing orange juice, mopping the floor, and I was like, what the? At like 2 years old, and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that he was my son, you know? And I remember one of the parent conferences, the teacher came up to me and said, hey, you know, your son is just too competitive on the field, you know, on the playground. And I was like, she's like, you need me to talk to him, like. And I looked her straight in the face. I'm like, I'm never going to talk to him about that. I'm not going to tone that down. You know, that's a gift, you know. That's a gift to be competitive. You know, I'm not going to tone that down, you know. And I think about all the things I've learned from my son, and I think about Naomi's life when she was born. She was born with Down syndrome, and I was like, man, I really cried myself to sleep that night. I didn't think that I would be able to do it. And I remember me and Stacey going to God's Word. In Psalm 34:4, it said that I sought the Lord, and He answered me, and delivered me from all my fears. And I think for me, with Naomi, I always thought like, hey man, you know, my son and my daughter had to grow up and be these people. But then I realized like, you know, these kids are just gifts from God. You know, they're here for a little bit with me, and then I'm going to pass, and I'm just passing on to them what God showed me. You know, I realized Naomi's actually, you know, probably one of my favorite people to hang out with. You know, she has so many gifts. She's good with people. And I look past that she has just like Down syndrome. That's not even a big deal to me anymore. So I think as parents, we need to have this vision for our kids, help them walk with Jesus, and think beyond what people are seeing in this world. So my talk today is on basically a spiritual legacy. And I think about the Old Testament to New Testament. God wants to use people. He wants to use ordinary people just like everybody in this room. If you're old, you're young, you know, you're white, you're black, you're Asian, whatever nationality you are, God doesn't care about that. He wants to see your heart. You know, in Chronicles, 2 Chronicles 16:9, it says, for the eyes of the Lord range throughout the earth to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to Him. So I think I'm giving you guys a break on the slideshow, whoever runs that. Basically today I'm just going to share from the Word. And I think God's just looking for one person, one man, one female that says, hey, I'm going to put you number one. Before school, before basketball, before money, before my wife, before my kids. He's just looking for one person. Because if you look throughout the whole Bible from Old Testament, New Testament, He uses normal people just like us. Abraham, you know, he was just a normal person, you know, and he sinned just like us. You know, he lied about his wife. You know, he's a human just like us. You know, there's all these great people in the Bible that are just like us. You know, there's nothing different between them and us. It's just saying, hey, who does God want to use? You know, and He's saying, hey, He's looking around. He's looking at your heart. He's not looking at how much money you have. He's not looking at all the things that people are looking at. He's only looking at your heart. You know, I look at Caleb and Joshua when they went to scout the promised land, and all the spies came back and said, hey, we're going against these giants. You know, we reported to Moses like, hey, we can't do this. It's too much. You know, but Joshua and Caleb had this different spirit and said, hey, you know, God's going to do it. He's with us. You know, and I think when you have that spirit and you trust in God, it's not only that you're blessed, but the people behind you are blessed. You know, I think like, hey, when God used Peter, he was just a normal person, you know, but He transformed him into this pillar for the church, to this rock. You know, and it's just like us. And I think about why is it so easy to get off track nowadays? I think this generation, starting with my son's generation, they're like the fidget spinners, the iPhones, you know, all these weird things that they like to do. And I was like, Nate, why are you wasting your time on all this stuff, you know? But actually the kids just like that. You know, our generation grew up with me and Tommy grew up with Super Nintendo, wasting our time with other stuff, just playing outside. You know, this generation actually doesn't play outside no more. You know, they play inside on the computer by themselves. You know, this is a very, very weird generation. You know, these are like some weird kids growing up. You know, but the reality, these are the most motivated kids of all time. They're the most educated and they're the most motivated. They have individualized sports, individualized tutors. This is the most motivated generation of all time. You know, but at the end of the day, it all comes with the parents. The parents have to lead them the right way. If not, they're going to be put in a little box and only think about themselves for the rest of their lives. Because that's how I see kids now. They come out and say, hey, Dad, I want this. Mom, I want this. And only think about themselves. But only the parents could help them with that. And tell them at a young age, life's not about the grades and it's not about you. So I thought about a couple of things that kind of get me off track. In Psalm 119:37, it says something really real simple, but I really enjoyed this verse. It says, Nate, thank you for these little note cards. These little sticky points. Turn my eyes away from worthless things and preserve my life according to your word. I think every day we think about a lot of worthless things. I mean, I'll be honest, you know. After meeting with people, after watching my kids put them to bed at 8:30 at night, I'm like super happy. I'm like, I get 2 hours to myself, you know. And a lot of times I just watch TV or just relax, you know, and just chill out, you know. But that time could be used in different ways. I could read the Bible. I could be praying for my neighborhood. You know, I could be doing other things. You know, so I think for me as a father and as a man, it's easy to get caught up in like, hey, I need to support my family. You know, I need to work harder, et cetera, et cetera. And then I miss out on what the true treasures are. The true treasures after I die. You know, one day when I lay in my bed, if I'm 70 or 50 or whatever it is, and I say, hey, God, what did I want to do on this earth? You know, it wouldn't be like, oh, man, I wish I made an extra $1,000. Or I wish, you know, I played more basketball. The only thing would probably be is like, I wish I prayed more. I wish I spent more time with my wife. I wish I spent more time with my kids. I wish I hang out with the neighborhood kids more that didn't know Jesus. These little small details. You know, but I think when I get caught up in the things of this world, basically the lies from the devil, a lot of times it just getting me on the wrong track. And then my kids get on the wrong track. You know, so it all, like Anthony said, it all just starts with the father in the family. Because that's what God called them to do, is be the head. They don't have to earn that responsibility because God called them to be the head of the family. But that comes with responsibilities. So I'll share a couple of thoughts on just how I came to know the Lord. I think some of you guys know my testimony, but back before '99, I actually was a wild child. You know, my dad would know, my brother would know. I used to play on the basketball court. I get in a lot of fights. You know, I had a bad mouth. You know, so I would say a lot of bad words. I've gotten in trouble a lot. You know, my son knows I went to Disneyland jail. I skipped school that day, senior year, and I snuck in and I went to jail. You know, I've been to the jail here in San Diego just for curfew. I've gotten in a lot of trouble. You know, I've cheated on tests. You know, I wouldn't say I was a good boy. You know, but one day when I went on campus, my friends shared Jesus with me. My whole life changed. You know, my friends started saying, hey man, you know, there's something different about you, you know. We used to go to the casinos every weekend, and we used to go to the clubs to look for girls, and I just realized like my life was empty, you know. But when I came to know Jesus, my whole life changed, my heart changed, and people saw something different in me. You know, I wasn't fighting on the basketball court anymore. You know, I told Nate when I went to San Marcos, before that San Diego State, I wasn't a good student. You know, I had to transfer because my grades weren't good. But when I went to San Marcos and I started putting God number one, I started doing well in school. You know, I living up to my Asian potential. You know, you know, I never did before. You know, I was finally living up to my Asian potential. You know, and I started doing well in math, etc. And one day, this guy next to me, he said, "Hey, you know, I want to give you $20 for your Scantron." You know, and before I would be like, "Yeah, man, here's my Scantron. Give me your $20." You know, I took that money in like a second. You know, and I started walking with Jesus, and I told Nate, you know, these temptations come, and I was like. And I thought about it, and I prayed about it. I was like, man, I'm not going to give you my Scantron, man. Do your own work, buddy. You know, it's like, you know, I studied myself. You know, I'm not going to give you my work. You know, but I know like 5 years ago, I would have paid him to get his Scantron, you know. So I think as God changed my life, I realized that not only was I going to be a light, but I didn't have to live for people anymore. I just want to do the things God wanted me to do, you know. And I thought the bigger story was when I went into college that I used to go to church at CBC, and a lot of times I'd say some bad words, and I saw some kids be like, you know, like scared if I said the F word or some bad words, be like, you know, all scared about me, you know. They're like, man, you guys are dorks anyway, you know. So I just basically took my own space and just left, you know. I stopped associating with Christians because I thought all they wanted to do was just judge me, you know. But when I was at UCSD, you know, these brothers, David and Daniel, and some of these Christian brothers and sisters, they started loving me for who I was, and I needed that. I needed real people to say, like, not just like, hey, I'm a Christian, you want to come with me to church. You know, I've heard that my whole life. I needed real people to come in my life and say, hey, I love you for who you are. You know, I know you're going to make mistakes, you know. But, I'm going to show God's love to you through the word and through real people. And my life started changing because I experienced this love through these people that, shared God's love with me. And I saw that. And the biggest thing they saw in me was this vision for my life. And I'll share with you this verse I've shared with you before. It's in Luke. It's in Luke 5:10. It says, Jesus said to Simon, which is Peter, do not be afraid, from now on you will catch men. And Jesus was a perfecter of this. He was the author of vision. He'd had this vision for Peter, and he was just a normal person. Peter was just a normal fisherman. And he said, hey, from now on you're going to catch people, souls. He was already setting up for the future. He already knew who was going to deny him, yet he knew he was going to prepare him for the future. And I think these guys that came into my life, they saw something bigger than me. They saw that, hey, Tim is going to invest in people for a lifetime. He's going to change the world. I'm going to look past his cursing. I'm going to look past the things he does. Sometimes I used to moon people in cars. I'm going to look past these things, and I'm going to see something in him that he can't even see. And I didn't see that. I didn't see, like, when people are investing in me, like, hey, one day you're going to get married and have kids and walk with Jesus for a lifetime. I never thought that in my wildest dreams. I only thought was, like, one day hopefully I could be in the NBA and make a lot of money. That was my only thought, And I never thought any of these things, But after they started investing in me, I started catching this vision, like, hey, God has a plan for my life, and it's bigger than what I want. So I remember one night, I was saying, hey, man, what do I want to do with my life? And God gave me this verse in Proverbs 16:3, and it says, commit to the Lord whatever you do, and your plans will succeed. So every day I used to, basically carry my life in my hand like this. Yeah, I want to do these things. But as I got older, I started opening up my hand and say, hey, God, whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. If you want me to do this, and this, I'll do it. And you guys know the story. I used to do real estate. I used to be a loan shark. I used to do home loans, home mortgages, and I liked that job. But God called me to join the Navigators, and I gave my life to God. And I said, hey, whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. It's not normal, I would say, for a first generation ABC to be a missionary, because most of the eggs are in the basket to make a lot of money. Let me just be honest with you. My parents didn't come to America for me to be a missionary. My parents came to America for me to make a lot of money and help them out. And that story didn't pan out that way, but I'm trusting God with my life. And me and my dad have had numerous debates about that. Numerous debates about being a missionary and is this a real job. I've had numerous debates with my dad and different people about that. One thought about this, John 12:24 talks about the seed, and it says, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains a single seed. And I think as I get older, you have to die to yourself for yourself to live and other people to live. Because human nature, we think about ourselves 100% of the time. Let's just be honest. When we wake up, we think about ourselves. Wake up, we think about ourselves. But when we die to ourselves, we're able to pass on the spiritual legacy that David and Daniel passed on to me, I passed on to my kids, and they passed on to other people. I think about the kids that I invest in, the young 20s that I invest in, Thomas, Julian, all these people I invest in. They used to live together with their girlfriends, never want to walk with God, didn't want to read the Bible. It just took me, Stacy, Nate, and Naomi showing them what a family does that walks with Jesus. Reading the Bible with them, spending time with them over and over and over. In the last 5 years, these guys have all got married. They have children now. They're walking with Jesus. They're working with the Rock ministry, with the prison ministry, and they're giving their life away to people. And all it takes is one simple investment from one person. I'm not anything special. I've just asked God to use my life. I'm going to share a couple other things about I think 5 basic golden nuggets, I would say, that's helped me with my relationship with God and my kids. Growing up, my brother knows that I didn't like to be alone. For some reason, I didn't like to be alone. I didn't like to watch TV alone. I would never go to movie theaters by myself. I would never definitely go to the mall by myself. I wouldn't go to Jack in the Box by myself. I wouldn't go to Alberto's by myself. I wouldn't be caught dead alone out there. I just like to have people with me. So if I went somewhere in my car, when my mom and dad bought me my first car was an old Volvo. It was like a tank, and I would just pick up my friends, and it was like such a bad car that they write their names on the ceiling, and there's all these funny things. But I would always have people over and be around people. I was just a feeling for me. I was scared to be alone. And I remember in 1999, we went to a college, basically, conference, for the Navigators. And I remember going to this room. The speaker said, hey, everyone go out there in the dark, in a room, wherever you want, and read the Bible and see what God speaks to you. And I was like, man, I'm scared. I don't like to be alone. I want to just go with my friend right now, and just skip your project, buddy. But I said, hey, I'll take this step of faith. And I remember I was in this room by myself. And I thought to myself, like, man, this is scary, But I was like, hey, God, give me a verse. I would like to have a verse from the Bible that would help me. And he gave me this verse, Psalm 73, 23, 25 to 6, 25, 26. And I'll read it to you. And this changed my life. It says, "Whom have I in heaven but you, and earth has nothing I desires beside you. My flesh and my heart may fail, but God is my strength of my heart and my portion forever." I realized that day that God would never leave me and He'd always be with me. He'd always be my best friend. He'd always be my Heavenly Father. I never actually acknowledged that my whole life. I always realized that only the people I see is who was around me. What you see is what you get. But that night I realized that God would always be with me. I wouldn't have to be scared of anything anymore. Then a couple years later I went to Indonesia. I remember sleeping on the floor in the middle of nowhere, just with a couple people, and I wasn't scared. I remember one time sleeping outside by myself in the middle of nowhere, thousands of miles away from my parents, thousands of miles away from anybody that physically even knew who I was, and I wasn't scared. I wasn't scared anymore. I just knew that God was with me, and I had a relationship with God, and that changed my whole life. There's another thing that changed my life in 2002. I started reading the Bible. Before that, I didn't read the Bible. No one ever taught me how to read the Bible. I didn't go to church. I didn't know anything about the Bible. In 2002, I put this Bible on my sink basically every morning. Every morning for the rest of my life. I read the Bible every morning. Nate knows. I go to my corner, by myself, and I read the Bible by myself. And it's been how many years? And every day I try to read the Bible. My friend Daniel, he's passed away, but he used to say, "Hey, Tim, you should read the Bible maybe 2 or 3 times a day." And I thought, man, I don't need to do that, man. Why only one time? And as I get older, I realized, hey, man, I need to read it more than one time, at least 3, 4 times a day to keep me sane. So now I do in the morning. I read the Bible and pray to God before my kids come home because it's going to get wild. I got to prepare for that. I read the Bible after the kids go to bed because I got a headache, and I'm thinking about the next day. I read the Bible just to keep me sane, because we have hard times in this world, and the Bible has changed everything in my life because it's helped me with my own relationship with God and to basically diffuse the devil's lies, how to live in this world. The second thing that's helped me, I would say right now as I get older, is being real with people. Ephesians 5:11 says, "Have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them." I gave a talk, maybe a Memorial Day weekend at UCSD in front of 50 UCSD kids. And for me, it's like I usually try to say, hey, when I give a talk, I want to, kind of rile them up, get them excited, etc. But I realized with this generation, all I had to do was just be real. All I had to say was like, hey, I'm a real person. And I struggle, I've struggled with Stacy in our marriage. I've made her cry before. I've made my kids cry. I'm not a perfect person. I'm not a perfect dad. But at the end of the day, it's like if I'm real with that with people and share about that, then people realize like I'm a real person. I don't think anyone up here, down there, up here thinks that I'm like this perfect person. But unless I share, people wouldn't know because people in this world actually don't really share anything. I would say when I ask someone how they're doing, they say good or they say bad, but it's very vague. And I think human nature is just to put up a facade, like a mask, like, hey, everything's okay. But the reality, everything's not. There's people dying in this world. We got people killing themselves and killing other people for it, and that's not okay. That's not okay with God. That's not okay that shouldn't be okay with us as Christians. So I think as a spiritual leader, one thing as I go forward in my life is I'm just trying to be real with people. I'm trying to ask people how they're doing, and I'm trying to share with them like what I'm doing too. I'm not always doing well. I have anger issues sometimes. I get stressed. I get worried. I have so many things on my plate. So many people I'm trying to help. Of course, I get stressed, but I have to share that with people. If not, people won't know that. So I think as I get older, I'm just trying to be open and honest with people. And I think as I do that, especially for Nate and his generation, I want them to be open and honest with me. Because I can't expect a college kid or a 10-year-old boy to share with me something that's hard if I can't share with something that's hard with them. If they grow up and they see that my dad says he's a perfect dad, but in private he's crazy, it's like he's not going to, 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2. It's not going to fit. So I think as I get older, I'm trying to be more and more real with people and live in this community. Proverbs 18:22 says, he who finds a wife finds what's good and receives favor from the Lord. I don't know if you guys know, but on my first date, I asked Stacy to marry me. I was friends with Stacy for about 4 years, and since before that, I actually didn't ever want to get married. My first relationship was horrible. I'll just be honest. It was like 10 breakups. It just wasn't a good relationship. So after that, I just said, hey, I didn't want to get married. But when I became a Christian, I realized that marriage wasn't about yourself. It was about giving God the glory and serving your wife and being a blessing and light to this world. And God created man and woman to be together. I think Tommy remembers on that first date, I actually lost my keys in the sand in Del Mar. And Tommy and Kenny, my friend Kenny, had to pick me and Stacy up. It's kind of embarrassing. and from there on, I realized that, Stacy's actually been obviously the better half, the MVP of our family, but she has all the gifts that support me. She's a good listener. She's very thoughtful. She's not loud. I'm loud. When we go to basketball games, she sits there and analyzes. I'm there like in buck wild, and afterwards she comes and rebukes me, So we're like a perfect combo, but she's come a long way because usually I bring people in the house, but Stacy lets me bring whoever I want in the house. She doesn't say like, oh, did you do a background check on these guys? She lets me bring any young person into the house. People in the neighborhood are really rough around the edges, she lets them in the house. She doesn't question that. She just says, hey, we're here to love them, And I think for her, and I realized for that, it's like our marriage is a bigger testimony to Nate and Naomi and to this lost generation than a lot of things that I could say to them. Because people nowadays marriage is basically going out the window in a lot of ways, for this next generation. They see it in a different way now. So I think part of my responsibility as a man is to serve my wife, and it's not easy. But we're working together as a team. And I'll close with a couple thoughts on my children. Deuteronomy 6, it talks about basically, I'll just read it real quick. It talks about impressing God's word onto your children. It says, talk to them when you sit at home, when you walk on the road, when you sit down, and when you get up. Tie them on the symbols of your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on your doorframes of your houses and on your gates. Basically, the promise, the saying to Israel was like, when you go forward in faith, pass this on your children, because God's all about spiritual generations. He's all about passing on to the next generation. He's all about this vision that like, hey, it's not about you, it's about the people behind you and generations to come. And if you invest in one, it could change thousands of generations after you. And you see it in the Bible. And I think about my kids and I think like, hey, a couple of things that have helped me. One is that every time me, Nate, and Naomi try to read the Bible in the morning, we try to start the day with God. Even in the morning, Nate wakes up at 7:25. We get out the door by 7:40, He basically eats breakfast, we read the Bible, and we're in the car, we're gone. But before we go to school, we have 3 to 4 to 5 minutes together. And that's very crucial, because Nate, if you guys know Nate, he likes to sit in the car and not say anything. He's just like, just hanging there, But he's a very good listener, So I always tell Nate, what's the purpose of your day today? Is it to get good grades? Is it to be the best basketball player at your school? Or is it to honor God? And it's a very simple conversation, And I say, hey, you're at Stone Ranch's school right here. There's 1,000 kids here. I would say 90% of them are lost and don't know Jesus. That's why you're there, is to be a light to them. Yeah, I want you to work hard. Yeah, I want you to have fun. But the bigger story is, I want you to bless your friends that don't know Jesus. And Nate's come a long way with that. He's been a blessing to a lot of his friends. I asked Nate the other day, I go, hey, what are some similarities between the characteristics you see in God? He said, he's nice, he's caring. And I go, well, what about your dad? What do you see? What are some nice things you like about dad? He said, you're nice and caring. It was kind of funny, kind of the same similarities, And I was like, a lot of times I forget that, my kids see God through me, even though I'm just a normal person. That God's going to use me to bless my kids, so they could visualize this, who God is. And this funny thing called monkey see, monkey do, So it's like Naomi has these funny words, and she goes, Dad, you're being a bugaboo, you're frustrating me. You're getting on my nerves, And I was like, yeah, where'd you get these words from? Well, like me, And I was like, man, I got to watch what I say around my kids, And the funny thing is, like, they also pick up on good things. With Stacy, they pick up that, being nice to people, listening to them, giving gifts. So all these small things that we think are small turn into really big things. The kids catch this vision. And I believe, this is just my thought, that kids actually learn more when they're with their parents and peers and people around them than in a classroom setting. Because in a classroom setting, I believe that when you hear a talk, you hear someone speak to you, you only learn 15 or 20% of what you hear. You learn 80 to 90% of what you teach and what you apply. And what you see. So I think a lot of times we think the small things when we're with our kids don't matter, but those are all the important things. It's very easy to just give my son an iPad and give my daughter an iPhone. I could do that all day. I could give it to him all day today and have a great day for myself. But at the end of the day, if I live today like that, I'll probably do that tomorrow. That's the easy way out. The harder thing is to ask him how he's doing. The harder thing is to read the Bible with him, to help people in our neighborhood. Those aren't easy things to do. Honestly, rather sit on the couch and watch the NBA Finals, DVR. I would rather do that, I'm just being honest. But at the end of the day, I don't think that's what God wants me to do. He wants me to bless these kids. And I'll share a couple of stories with Nate and Naomi and I'll close out. Nate has a friend at school named Ethan. Ethan was getting on Nate's nerves, to the point where they both, kind of got into it, and I think they needed a break. He came home and told me this situation, and my first reaction was like, forget this guy then. Let's just don't talk to him no more. Give him some space for a week and leave him alone. And so I went for a walk that night here in the neighborhood, and I was like, God, what do you want me to do with this guy, Ethan? And God was telling me, hey, you need to love him. You need to pray for him. You need to invite him to church. I was kind of like, oh, man, I knew God was going to tell me that. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to ditch this guy, And I think initially it's like as parents, it's like you always want to protect your kids. You don't want them to go through anything hard. You kind of put them in this little bubble. At the end of the day, it's like that's not going to help them. You got to burst that bubble. Nate and Naomi got to go through hard things in life so they could be men and women of God. So we talked to Nate about that. Said, hey, let's pray for your friend Ethan. Let's forgive him. Let's talk to him about it, and let's move on. And Nate did that, and here they are. I would say they're even better friends. But if we said, hey, forget this guy, man, forget Ethan. What's going to happen the next time someone comes around and is mean to him? Forget that guy then. Forget these guys. They're not nice to me. That's not why Jesus came. Old Testament is about God's people being set apart. I've studied Old Testament, New Testament for the last couple of years pretty well. Old Testament is about God's people being set apart, and where they don't mingle with, I would say, non-Christians, with other tribes and other nations. They're called to be set apart. New Testament is completely different. Jesus comes on the scene. He intermingles with all lost people. And the Pharisees, the religious people, don't understand why Jesus does this. They don't understand this because it's contradictory to everything that they know. Because all they know is works and good works and good works. And they don't understand, why does Jesus want to do this? But the moral of the story is that Jesus set it up for us. Jesus set it up for us, for our generation, that we would be a blessing. This church would be a blessing to this community, to the people that are lost. And that's why we're Christians. Christians aren't called to be set apart and be Christian weirdos no more and be a Christian bubble. We're not called to do that. We're called to be set apart, to minister to people that are lost, to influence them, and to be a blessing to them and share Jesus with them. That's what we're called to do. That's why we're called to be spiritual leaders. That's why it's hard to be Christians. It's not easy to be a Christian anymore because you have to set your bar so high that if someone knows you for a year or 2 years, they say there's something different about you. But it's so easy for us to fit in with everybody else. But that's not what God's called us to do. I think about Naomi. I think about when Naomi's at school in her special day school. And I say sometimes people think these are special day kids, lower class citizens. I could see some people looking at them like that, But I don't see my daughter like that. I don't see my daughter as a lower class citizen. I see her as a higher citizen than some normal kids. I took her on a trip the other day to the zoo. She had more personality than 100% of those kids in that kindergarten class in that normal day class. She was just being so loving and nice to everybody. And it's not about comparing my kids. It's about believing in them. It's about seeing something good in them that God created them to be. It's about seeing something in them that I need, as a father, need to see in them. And I wrote down for that is that hey, if Nate and Naomi know that mom and dad love them, that God loves them, this fundamental truth, it's not based on school. Because I would say this generation with school and life probably have the most pressure of all time. People are going to college with 5.0s. Some people can't even get to college with a 4.0. When I graduated high school in 1996, I got into San Diego State with 3.0. I was so easy. They'd probably throw my application in the trash today. That's not going to get you anywhere. But as parents, if I ride my son so hard and my daughter so hard to be the best student, to be the best basketball player, to be the best, et cetera, that's not going to help them at all. That's not going to help them perform for anything. So I think as fathers, we have to really love our kids for who they are, not what they could do, so they could just be free. Because one downfall for me that's hard for me is I compare. I always tell Nate, hey, man, how come you're not drinking your milk? How come you're not growing? But at the end of the day, Nate's size is going to be his size. He has more heart than most people. He's his size is his size. But if I ride him and for forever about his height, that's not going to help him. I just got to care for who he is based on what God's given him. So my thought before I go for you guys after I pray is that hey, what's one thing that you could adjust and change to your life so you could be a spiritual leader for your family? I'm just talking about fathers, I'm talking about for kids, for moms. Because my original talk was just based on dads, but I switched it up probably on Thursday because it seemed like it was just all about the dads. But for me, it's about the moms, the dads, the kids. Everyone has a spiritual legacy. Everyone has a purpose on this earth. From young to old, we all have a purpose on this earth. And everyone in this room is surrounded during the week by non-Christians. Everyone in this world, in this room has influence. And it's just up to you if you want to use that for God. So as I close out, hopefully write something down that you could apply during the week to grow with God or to bless someone or to basically think hey man, what do I want to be remembered for before I die? You know, is it living for God or is it living for myself? So thanks for letting me share today. I'll close out with a prayer. Dear Lord, thank you for just being our Heavenly Father and loving us for who we are. Lord, not what we do. Thank you for sending your Son Jesus to die for our sins, that we have no more condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. We have no more guilt. We have no more shame, that we're free. We're not in bondage anymore to the devil's lies. We could have freedom to choose, to make decisions. Lord, I pray that the things that distract us during the week, if it's school, image, money, our future, people's opinions of us, Facebook, internet, etc. There's just so much garbage out there. Lord, I pray, Lord, that you would free us from these distractions. Let us make better choices, Lord. And I pray, Lord, that every single person in this room, Lord, that our heart would be for you. Lord, to develop our own relationship with you, Lord, to be spiritual leaders in our family, in our communities, right where we're at, Lord, that we could invest in people around us that are lost, Lord, that you could use our lives the way you want to use our lives, Lord. So thank you for today. I pray that you bless all the fathers in this room, Lord, and keep on blessing our church, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.